Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be, good evening. This is our worldwide broadcast here, our webcast for Neverfail Continuous Availability. This is actually the second one in our series. We had one in January that was very successful. We had a lot of folks joining from around the world. So we know that you're joining from many, many different places and many different time zones, and we thank you for joining us and spending your time with us today. So as we get started here, just a couple of things we need to just make sure that everyone knows is that there is an interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. So if you click on that, we are supporting both Spanish and Portuguese today. So it can allow you to hear the presentation in native language, which is always nice. And we will continue to have these as part of our global webinar series. So with that in mind, let's get started. So as I mentioned, my name is Michael Wrightson. I am the General Manager for Continuous Availability here at Neverfail. And I've been with the company for about 11 years and in various different roles in the organization. I started out as a pre-sales engineer and then kind of worked up into product management. I became VP of product management, and now I'm general manager. I run the business. The good news is that we have an amazing team of people that have been here for many, many years. And just give you a little bit of background about this organization. We've been here for about 20 years. We've had a product line for continuous availability that focuses on Windows servers. And we started out as a consultancy. And from there, we kind of built our own technology because back in the day, we saw that there was gaps in the technologies that were available. So, back in the late 90s, the only thing that you could get really was backup technology and maybe some clustering technology, but there was a lot of gaps that were there. So what we did was we purposed to build a software company and fill in those gaps that we'll talk about a little later on in the presentation. Today, we are a global organization. And I have people in the United States. I have sales people in Austin, Texas, on the West Coast of the United States. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. In the United States, we have folks also in the UK, and we also have our engineering team in Romania. So worldwide organization and a very mature product that has protected literally tens of thousands of customers worldwide. So what are we going to talk about today? So today is an interesting time to be in. If you notice that, and probably you've seen in the news, that there is a lot of activity around ransomware, especially in the United States. The East Coast of the United States has been hit with a very significant ransomware attack that has basically taken down the gas pipeline for the East Coast of the United States. So we can see that these types of ransomware attacks are very, very relevant to us, but not just for our infrastructure, but also for many different organizations. And we'll talk about what that means in just a couple minutes. So our agenda today is to kind of understand the importance of integrating a BCDR strategy into your organization. And we're going to have an interview with a great friend of mine, Dov Kaplaski. He is the CEO and owner of one of our big partners here in the United States, and he's going to give us some of our experiences with Continuity Engine that they've had over the years. Then we're going to focus a little bit on the real cost of ransomware because of what we see today. This may be the biggest ransomware attack of all time, and may be the costliest, right? So we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. Also, understanding what DR and business continuity are, because they're not the same. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So just so we have a clear understanding of what those are. And then we will move into the factors for recovering from a ransomware attack using Continuity Engine, right? And so we will finish up with how Continuity Engine will be able to protect you or help you to recover, during a ransomware attack and get back to operations very, very quickly. Okay, next slide. All right, so So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing today. So about a week ago, we had a major ransomware attack on what we call what's called the Colonial Pipeline here in the United States. They are one of the biggest pipelines in the U.S. They provide about 50% of the energy for for the East Coast of the United States, and they were hit with a ransomware attack on Friday. It literally took down their entire IT network. So the result of that was the pipeline came to a screeching halt. Even as I speak this morning, 1,000 or more gas stations are closed because they have run out of gas. So this has major impact on an economy. And I live in a small community. We have a Facebook page for the community, and everybody's outraged over it. How could this happen, right? So the thing is that, when we see these types of things happening, it kind of makes you question if they prepared for this or not, right? And so what we see today is that ransomware is attacking organizations every 14 seconds. That is amazing that we see that level of activity with this and they're coming out with multiple variants of this. And so they're keeping up with this has become a real challenge. And so we see this, almost, exponential growth in these attacks, 97% increase since 2017. 34% of those attacks take down systems for at least a week. So that seems to be the average here in the United States. But we've talked to our partners in other countries, in Latin America and in Africa and Southeast Asia, and it could go as much as 2 weeks. And the reason why is companies and organizations, they try to figure out exactly if they're going to pay this or not, or how they can recover from this without having to pay. And it just takes time to be able to make those types of decisions. But so we're going to talk about how we can build some security, if you will, some insurance to allow you to have an off-ramp from a catastrophic ransomware attack. Now, we know that this one attack that we've seen here on the East Coast of the United States is affecting the energy production or energy distribution, I should say, for a major population of the United States. When we last checked, the ransomware cost about $25 million to hackers, right? But the actual downstream effects of that are a lot worse, right? We're talking billions of dollars in losses, and this may be the biggest one ever. So, when you think about all of the downstream effects from this one attack. So as you can see, there is a lot of things going on. Ransomware is a real problem. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we can move through this and protect ourselves from this. Okay, so, when you look at plan A, so when you put a plan in place to protect yourself against like a malware attack or ransomware attack or any type of cybersecurity issue, the first thing that comes to mind is, do I have my hygiene right? And so from a cybersecurity perspective, there is a couple things that you need to do. So first, you need to figure out how to implement frameworks that allow you to focus in on protecting the organization from a ransomware attack. So implementing things like a NIST framework or an ISO type of cybersecurity framework, if you will, is really key to ensuring that you at least have done the hygiene part of this, getting the protections in place, the technologies to be able to detect whether you have been penetrated and a ransomware has been inserted into your network, right? So this is really what I call the plan A, and plan A has two parts. Obviously the cybersecurity frameworks that are both for civilian and military focused. And then there's also regulatory compliance. Now, these are the ones for the United States, right? But every country has some type of regulatory compliance that kind of focuses in and has some level of crossover with NIST or ISO frameworks. So it's important that we look at these types of these frameworks as our first layer of defense in creating a plan A for your organization. So, regulations certainly play a part in this, but really, if you don't have a security framework in place, you're pretty much asking for some type of problem. So, so why is BCDR being driven by cybersecurity? So when you look at the different frameworks that are there, you have to see that putting a security framework in place is only part of the solution. So, you can actually have a lot of technology protecting your organization, but there may be gaps in those technologies that you just don't know. You assume that you're covered in all different aspects, but certainly putting a cybersecurity posture in place requires continuous controls, right? So you have to have policies and procedures and evidence collection and automated control testing and remediation. And what do I mean by remediation? So when you put your policies and procedures in place, you got to be able to collect evidence that those policies and procedures are actually working, right? And then you need to test to see if they if they will deliver what you say that they're going to deliver. But at some point there might be a failure, and I'll give you an example. If I'm a user and I have access to 20 different systems, and my policy is to delete those accounts when you're terminated or when you leave the organization every 15 minutes, and my account doesn't get deleted, there is a remediation process that should be put in place to make sure that those failures are remediated. And you should be able to have them logged and flagged so that you can see that those things have worked. This provides you a deep means of providing risk mitigation for these types of incidents. But it doesn't stop there. So in NIST and ISO, they also have requirements for BCDR posture. So what does that mean? Well, you have to produce a business impact study and analysis. You should really look at putting a formal plan in place for BCDR. Then when you select your tools that you're going to use for recovery, you really need to look at this holistically and say, I need to be able to not only implement this technology, but I need to test it regularly, right? So this is what you call your plan B. So plan A is your mitigation strategy. Plan B is your emergency preparedness. So this is really what you need to do in order to get your organization ready for a ransomware attack. Ransomware right now is treated as a cybersecurity problem, but that's not quite the entire story. Ransomware should really be treated as a BCDR issue. So the mitigation part is your preparedness, right? And when it happens, if something fails and it still happens, BCDR is your ability to recover from that, right? So you have a twofold approach to solving or to dealing with a ransomware attack. So don't take my word for it, right? We're going to talk to one of our premier partners here in the United States. Dov Kaplowski is the owner and CEO of Newcom. They're based in Pembroke, Massachusetts, United States. And they've been really working with us and selling Continuity Engine into their customer base for many, many years. So what I'd like to do is bring Dov to the stage here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to do maybe a 5-minute interview and to talk about his experiences with Neverfail. Dov, nice to see you. Welcome to our webcast, our global webcast. First one for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me.
So when we're talking about BCDR, I know you guys have you're focused in on the government, the government sector of our country. You do a lot of work with state and local governments. So why did you select Neverfail as your primary partner? I know you got there's a lot of technologies out there, right? So why did you specifically work with us?
Well, again, thank you for inviting me, Michael. And it's really an alignment. Newcom focuses on our customers and their success, and we really strive to partner with other companies who have similar missions and visions around customer service. So the Never Fail team works really closely with our mutual customers, and to make sure the product's installed and functioning. And it's really, they do all of that before they really call that engagement complete. So it's really aligned with how my company and my team does business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that we've had a lot of activity. I know we've deployed Continuity Engine in a lot of places in the last 6 months or so, just because of this ransomware. But what are you seeing as it pertains to this out in the field today?
Well, we've engaged several customers who've been impacted by ransomware directly, and it's not uncommon any longer, as you mentioned earlier. These customers have had many days up to multiple weeks of downtime, and it's extremely expensive to replace hardware in their critical infrastructure. Additionally, as we mentioned, we're focused on public sector, public safety, and government, and the 911 dispatch that we work with. Those team members, in some cases, have had to handwrite the information. And so we've seen direct impact there in productivity, and it really puts the public at risk if they lose the ability to see related calls across their organization and to know the whereabouts of their officers and the resources that are out there.
And so, that seems to be what we're seeing across, all sectors, whether it is state and local government. We've seen this in some of our other partners in Latin America and also in Africa, as I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing also that a lot of different organizations are getting hit. So we're seeing infrastructure in Latin America. We're seeing even radio stations, things like that. Now, since you've been working with us for so long, what has been the feedback from your customers with Continuity Engine?
Well, I've been on some of the calls and some of the meetings, and definitely as the training continues for our team, the Never Fail solution, it really creates a real-time replication pair of those servers, whether it's physical, virtual, or a combination of the two. So the secondary server site is secured and allows traffic on specific ports, and only from its matched primary server. And that's really the key. That's the key to the Never Fail solution, and the reason we recommend it. It also has the standard features that is nice, that we don't have to buy those as additionals, which is the monitoring of the operating systems or operating system events, service level events, and network events. And when there's an issue, the system will enable that secondary server, make it active. So really, for us, it's a complete solution. And the customer likes that. We don't have to add on additional costs down the road or when they realize they need something else.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So if you had to kind of summarize the value of this to your company and to your customers, how would you term that?
Our customers, they're Never Fail fans, and that's what we're looking for in the partnership between Never Fail, us, and the customer. From the first interaction with the professional services team, during the implementation, to the support that they receive when they encounter a need, the Never Fail team excels, and they ride right along with the Newcom team with feedback, so that we have a really great closed loop of communication. And that just proves to us the Never Fail has a commitment to customer service, as we do. And again, the customers are fans of Never Fail.
Well, that's just tremendous. And you've been with us for a while. We've done these deployments. We've seen how this can change, the game really for a lot of these state and local governments that are the target of these types of attacks. I mean, they're probably the top of the list. And so as we continue to work with a lot of our partners, and there's a lot of them on the line today with us, really try to think about how you can add value to your customers and be able to protect them from not only just the natural disaster stuff, right? which is the obvious. But these are really insidious, attacks that are happening, and it's getting worse and worse. So Dub, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate. We know you're busy, and you took the time to to talk with our global audience, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you again, Michael. Appreciate the time.
Bye bye. Okay, so as we move on with our presentation, let's talk a little bit about the costs of ransomware. So we mentioned today that, we don't know what the real cost of this is going to be after this is all said and done, but I can assume that this event is probably going to be in the billions, right? So this may be the biggest expense yet. So when you look at, how this thing is kind of rolled out over the years, and we started seeing this, in 2014, 2015, but it really started taking the stage around 2016, where it became visible to people. And so, as you can see here, these are the notable attacks that have happened, and as they've kind of went worldwide, we can see that even things, my hometown, the city of Atlanta, in 2018, had a major attack. Major systems were attacked. Financial systems, emergency management, everything was consumed with this ransomware attack. But it just continues to get more and more and more, and we start seeing more visibility in municipalities and radio stations and things like this. Everybody is starting to see that this is a very, very big problem. And of course, this week, we see kind of like the icing on the cake, if you will, one of the biggest ones of all time. So it's important that we understand that this is not just a problem for them, right? We should assume that this is a problem for us. And so when we do this, when we put these controls in place to be able to recover from this, you have to assume that it will happen to you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the differences between business continuity and disaster recovery, because when you're talking about ransomware, it is really important to understand where it fits, right? So with business continuity, it is a much more progressive type of operation, right? We're talking about automated, intelligent recovery. And so, BCDR is about the survival of that mission critical business application, right? So making sure that it's on, because if it's not, then, you could be losing business. You could be losing revenue. It could be losing the supporting applications in your local environment, your data center, that really holds up the business, right? So BC is really an all-inclusive plan that keeps critical systems continually running in the event of a planned or unplanned outage. That's basically what it is. We're trying to get you to zero downtime. That's what a business continuity plan provides, right? But what about disaster recovery? So in the case of a ransomware attack, this is really more of a reactive type of situation. So when you look at, kind of the anatomy of this, the first thing that's going to happen is systems go down, people start calling, or, the help desk, and, systems are just not available to everybody. But then with ransomware, it's a little bit different, because it's such an insidious thing that kind of perpetrates its way through your entire network and all your IT systems. There is a real impact study that has to be done. So that, along with the recovery process, makes this such a bad situation. So a good disaster recovery plan is reactive. It allows you to be able to recover these systems, literally within minutes, right? So in a ransomware type of situation, you should be able to take the recovery process out of the equations, because you can do that very, very easily, and then concentrate on what happened and who did it, right? So this is really what we're striving to achieve, is being able to get your systems so that you can recover very, very quickly, seconds to minutes, but you still probably have to do that triage, that assessment, if you will, that impact, and make sure that the hygiene of the network has been cleaned and rid of this problem. So why a comprehensive BCDR strategy is critical? Well, we know that 80% of small businesses are prone to ignore or delay investment in BCDR. We all know that. It's like it's really, I mean, it's gotten better over the last couple of years, especially with some of the natural disasters that have happened that are noteworthy. But it's still something that people, it's a second class citizen, right? They don't really fund this the way it should be. So awareness and the risks has to be balanced with cost, right? So you need to be able to say, okay, we have these risks, we have ransomware, we have these natural disasters, we're sitting in an earthquake or hurricane prone area, or maybe I'm in the Midwest of the United States, they have tornadoes and it's a real big threat every single year. So you got to measure the cost versus the risk and then put the right technologies in to be able to do this. The other thing we need to do is understand that 20% of businesses probably will not survive, right? If they don't put a disaster recovery plan in place, when it hits, you're probably not going to come back in business. And we need to really, as IT professionals, as partners or VARs, we need to teach and educate our customers that if they don't do this, the result could be very bad for them, right? They could be out of business. And so we're seeing this growth, over the last, 5, maybe 10 years of the losses that are increasing because of a lack of a business continuity strategy. In fact, when you add, ransomware attacks into this, you're into the hundreds of millions, probably this week, the billions, right? So this is real stuff, right? And it's not just ransomware. It's all of the different things that could affect your business continuity within your organization. So what are the key factors to recovering from ransomware? So the thing is that you have to assume plan A is going to fail. I mean, I think that's pretty, with a company such as Colonial Pipeline, and they're in the business of energy, they got money, right? And yet plan A failed. And I'm sure they did all the right stuff. They did a lot of things to help to try to mitigate this risk, but it wasn't enough. So when you have a plan A that fails, the logical approach is to have a plan B ready for you, right? Plan B is your business continuity strategy. So in order to do that, you need to treat ransomware as a business continuity event. So once the prevention fails, right, which is your cybersecurity frameworks or the mitigation processes that you put in place, you got to have a reaction-based continuity strategy that can get your systems back up and running. It should not take a week for this to happen. It should not take 2 weeks for this to happen. You should be able to focus in on what happened, and your critical systems should be able to be brought back online relatively quickly, literally within minutes, probably with the, focusing on what happened. You may want to wait for them to actually be plugged back into the network until the hygiene is done. But the key thing is that your recovery process shouldn't be overwhelming to you, right? That should be easy, push button, done, right? Focusing on what happened should be the biggest, pretty much where you put all your resources. So be aware that also that traditional clustering technologies provide a false sense of security. They're just, they're not really designed for some type of ransomware attack, right? So ideally what you want is not only to have a plan A, which is your mitigation, plan B is your
Entonces,
recovery, and then plan C would be a new recovery plan if plan B fails, right? So now you have 3 ways of recovering on this. Okay, so let's talk a little bit of how to prepare for a disaster. So when you look at the different things that could potentially happen, you have to, look at the applications holistically, and you have to say, okay, these are ones that I can live with, recovery for a day. These ones I need recovery within 6 hours. I need these ones within an hour. I need these ones within minutes, right? Those are defining your what we call the RPO and RTO, so recovery point objective, recovery time objectives. These are critical in order for you to define how you're going to do this recovery process. And then once you do that, you can take all of your applications and now you can put them into a group, right? We call these tiers, recovery tiers. And typically those recovery tiers are, I usually call them 1 to 5, right? Some people say it's 0 to 4, right? But the idea here is, a tier 1 approach to business continuity would be having technology that can literally restore business systems with pretty much a hands-off approach within 30 to 90 seconds. Tier 2, maybe, I don't know, an hour or so, less than an hour, maybe an hour to recover. That would be your typical clustering type of technologies, right? And then when you talk about tier 3 through tier 5, you're talking about, using different types of data protection technologies that, do backups, maybe backup offsite, and maybe into the cloud, and even doing archival type of scenarios, right? So these are all part of what you need to do to build a good continuity strategy. And so, you have to look at, one of the things that we saw maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. Well, maybe it was a little longer than that. Remember when Hurricane Sandy came through the East Coast of the United States? Some of you probably saw, New Jersey, being wrecked and, massive flooding in New York City. Well, Hurricane Sandy, we had one customer in Manhattan that their data center was underwater. And so they actually had our technology in place, but they created a great business continuity strategy, but what they didn't do is they didn't think of their departments, right? So they really protected the internal IT systems, but they forgot their actual department levels. And then when they figured it out, when they failed over to their DR site, they realized that the departments also had critical systems that they needed to protect. That obviously was corrected after that event. And they added more of continuity engine to protect those. But it just shows you that you really need to do the analysis. You need to understand what you have and and what technologies to apply to those. And so as you continue through this process, you need to analyze the cost versus doing it on premise versus the cloud. Building a robust framework for business continuity includes implementing some type of NIST or ISO cybersecurity strategy, right? So remember that slide that we talked about, right? That there's an overlap of both of those from a cybersecurity posture and BCDR posture perspective. Then the overlap is the cybersecurity framework. So these are the things that you need to do to prepare for this disaster. And one thing I will say, and we'll move on from this, is that if you don't test this, you're probably asking for problems. So test, test, test. So once you get your BCDR strategy in place, just test it, make sure it's all done, and you know it works, and then you can have it all written up on how this procedure is going to work, and then you can have confidence that you can execute it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the causes of some of these of downtime. So when you look back about 20 years or so, we've been in business about 20 years, but our consultancy went into like the late 90s, right? As I mentioned before. So when we first started, the big factor when it comes to downtime was literally operating system or maybe even hardware failures, data corruption, and of course, natural disasters. That was really what we were designing for, right? These are typically your clustering technologies, maybe data protection technologies that really focus in on those areas. But as we got into the 2000s, we really found that there are different things that probably actually have more impact on your production environment than even hardware in natural disasters, right? Hardware has become very good. We don't see massive catastrophic losses of hardware anymore like we did back in the 90s and early 2000s. Hardware is very solid now. So what we're seeing, and according to Gartner, the most issues that you're going to see is going to be probably in human errors and application problems. And when you're talking about applications, it's really complex because you really have 3 areas in which you could potentially see failures. Application problems is made up of services, the performance of the application, and its accessibility. So those three aspects all need to be kind of monitored along with things like the networking and whatnot. And so this was really the focus probably from the mid 2000s to, literally, well, it's still a major focus. But what we've done in the last couple of years is we've added ransomware to that. So the cybersecurity aspects to this. So all of these things can be mitigated if we have the right product and process in place to be able to do that. So why is Continuity Engine different than other technologies that are on the market, right? And there's an ocean of them. As we talked to Dov, he had a lot of different options for different types of technologies out there, but he chose Continuity Engine, and there's a reason why. And this is why. Because when you look at the basic fundamentals of a continuity strategy, data replication and backup and restore are fundamental. You got to do that regardless of the technology that you have. So data protection is a fundamental component, but it only protects the zeros and ones, right? It does not have any understanding of what's going on at the hardware level, right? So you're basically taking a snapshot of your data at a point in time, and you're basically replicating that, or even if it's using CDP, it's continuous changes that are being replicated off. But the key thing is you're protecting the zeros and ones. So files and folders, maybe virtual machines, things like that. So obviously it doesn't have any idea what's happening underneath it. So that's where we add basic failover to this, right? So basic failover is, essentially, things like clustering technologies. We're talking about like a Microsoft failover cluster, or semantic technology, VCS or whatever. Virtual availability, fault tolerance applications, hyper-converged infrastructure, the basically software defined availability, if you will, for virtual hardware. But it all really focuses in on hardware availability. That at the end of the day, you're protecting hardware. The software is kind of a consequence of it. So it has no idea what's actually happening under the hoods of the application stack itself. So if something happens to the hardware, of course, we're just going to bring another copy of it on and just power it up, and everything just boots up and you're good, right? But it doesn't know that there's an application process. So there's obvious gaps between basic failover, data replication, and backup and restore technologies. So where we fill in all the gaps is with continuous availability. So as we mentioned, basic failover has no application awareness. But with continuous availability, we can take a little bit of the basic failover, replication, and backup technologies and make it intelligent. So you have intelligent failover with, data replication and fully orchestrated recovery. So we can get you so that you can do both local and remote availability with recovery times of 30 to 90 seconds. So now we focus on the business itself, the recovery of the business. And that's really what the value that we bring to the table with Continuity Engine. So now you go from, say, a recovery-centric solution, which is really about backup and data protection technologies, up to full availability with an intelligent process that can see what's happening inside your application server at the hardware level, and be able to react to those, even at the networking level. So there are three different types of approaches to this. So with Continuity Engine, we have what we call intelligent high availability. So what is intelligent high availability? Well, it's the ability to monitor all of the things that are happening inside your application server real time, and be able to fail over to a standby copy of that server without having any hands-on approach to this, right? So we want to be able to automate based on this intelligence layer to see what's happening inside the application stack, and just say, I see this happening. This is a cue for me to fail over to the standby server. So we're talking about human errors and application problems, and we talked about those three aspects of it. Networking problems, hardware failures, even ransomware attacks, right? Um, Things like natural disasters and data corruption. All of these things we can use intelligent high availability for. And by the way, we support this. It's hardware agnostic. It can work on any hypervisor platform. It can run on physical servers. As long as it's a Windows server, we're good. And so physical, virtual, and we're able to fail over within 30 to 90 seconds and keep everyone active on the network and working. The second one is what we call effortless disaster recovery. So the idea here is to take that standby clone copy and put it into another data center. And so with no geographical limitations, you can have either automatic failover to your standby data center, or even push button initiated failover. Either way, the recovery is 30 to 90 seconds, and we also can limit the amount of bandwidth that it consumes as it replicates over your wide area network, which is great for organizations that have limited bandwidth, or maybe they have congested bandwidth. So between in intelligent high availability and effortless disaster recovery, those could actually be merged together into what we call tertiary. So tertiary essentially is the best of both worlds. So you have the benefits of both. And so you have full application aware failover locally, that's automatic. And then you have a third node at a remote data center, just in case you lose that production environment. This is where Plan C comes in. So, and we're going to talk about this more in detail in just the next couple slides. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about how this all works. So when you look at how we build our cluster, we use what we call a clone-based architecture. So clone-based architecture essentially takes a copy of the original server, and we use that as a standby server. It is not visible to the end users. But what we've done is we've built a couple of IP addresses. We call that the channel. It's isolated, and only our protocols run over this. I think Dov actually had mentioned this during his presentation, his experience. So that channel is locked down by IP addresses and also by port protocol. Only Continuity Engine can talk over this channel. So what it does is it provides real-time replication to this. So real-time replication goes over. We have a list of the files and folders and registries that need to be replicated real-time. The bits and bytes change. It goes over this channel, and it is written in the same order to the passive node. So with that in mind, then you add continuous monitoring to this, which pulls the intelligence layer into this. So now we're monitoring for applications and hardware problems and networking issues. All of these things are monitored through a set of threshold rule sets that can then trigger a failover process if necessary. Now, what's nice about Continuity Engine is all of the nodes are firewalled. So primary to secondary, secondary to tertiary. So nothing can get through this, the firewall except for Continuity Engine communication traffic. So this is a great way of protecting your servers and giving you that Plan B and Plan C. So notice we also have what we call a data rollback module. So although we have real-time replication, if you do get some type of infection on your production server and it takes it down, we actually can take snapshot copies of the data periodically on different schedules on the primary, secondary, and tertiary, but they are localized snapshots. They're not replicated, which allows it to, with the firewall, it protects them from being infected with ransomware. So now if I have to fail over to my passive node, my secondary, I can go back to the local snapshots and recover to whatever point in time that I need to. This is an amazing piece of technology, and it allows you to have, if it's implemented properly and the channels are locked down the way they should be, then you really have your Plan B and Plan C for both your secondary and also your tertiary. So when you look at this, and let's go through the scenario, right? You have an infection, and then what happens, you go through a process where you replicate some of the bad data over to your over to your secondary server. And so when you do that, you can just roll back and bring the systems back up, and basically you're in business. So now you can focus in, as I mentioned, on the causes of the problem rather than the recovery of the services. So with that in mind, the data rollback module is a key component of this. It's part of our data protection piece of Continuity Engine. It minimizes the loss of data. We're talking about replication real time in milliseconds. It allows for the restoration to multiple data points with the data rollback module. It restores only relevant information for the application itself. So we're protecting the files and folders and registry keys of the application configuration because the operating systems are firewalled. That's all we need to do. We just need to restore the data to its last point for the application server. We don't really need to worry about the operating systems because they're firewalled from each other. You can go back instead of going back to backups, you can use the data rollback module to recover that data, which obviously saves time and money. And so the rollback processes only take a couple minutes. So literally within 5 minutes, even if you have to do a rollback, you can have your system running, and then set aside because you know that it's recovered, and you can do your triage and your root cause analysis for the attack. And so this graphic kind of shows an illustration of how it works. So you have ransomware coming in the front door. It's firewalled from the passive nodes, so you don't have to worry about it getting through those. So if the primary server goes down, the secondary server is there. You can fail over and then do your rollback, which is really nice. And then the operational improvements of Continuity Engine really assure that you have a security posture. So because these are clones of one another, you can patch the passive nodes in real time, reboot them. Even if it takes 4 hours, it doesn't matter because your production server is still online and is processing data. It will just catch up the replication process. Once that's done, you can just switch over your users to the passive node. The application comes back online, there's no data loss, and then you can take down your production servers and do your patching. So, this provides you with the ability to go 99.9% of uptime, and you have pretty much effortless backups from your passive nodes. So of course we can protect individual servers, but one of the nice values of this technology is that, with multi-tier applications, they can actually be spread across multiple servers. So you can, literally have some of the servers running on server 1, server 2, server 3, which makes up the entire application stack. And then from there, you can protect the entire core of your applications. You can do a full site level failover with Continuity Engine. So you have the best of all these are part of Continuity Engine's core. All right, so now here's the key takeaways from our event today. So when you're looking at a disaster recovery situation with ransomware, the first thing is you got to understand is when you're preparing for these things, it's not if, it's when. You got to assume that it will happen. Let's take the ransomware out of this, right? You're going to see that there's going to be some type of disaster, whether you're in a hurricane zone or you're in an earthquake zone or maybe tornadoes. But you could even have a fire in your data center or water leak. We had one customer years ago. Their main water line or pipes were over the data center. It broke one day, and thousands of gallons of water just poured right into their data center. So it can happen. So you have to have the ability to recover from these types of things. And ransomware attacks will continue, and they will continue to hit government agencies and infrastructure. It's only getting worse. We see that this week. Most of the cybersecurity policies really need to be enacted, right? So if you haven't done so, this is really, you need to take a look at how you can do this and get these frameworks in place to be able to protect your business, along with a disaster recovery plan that kind of goes along with it, as we mentioned, right? There's the crossover of those. Engine is uniquely designed to cover all of the main causes of downtime. So we talked about that slide that has all the different factors that can come in. we've really designed our technology to protect you from all of that, right? And be able to recover from those. And so Continuity Engine's continuous availability model really is designed for your mission critical applications. So real quick, the benefits of this, we talked about these intelligent application, intelligent high availability, which really provides, it allows you to identify and proactively react to these types of incidents. It gives you 100% hands-off approach to business continuity. Provides you with a very simple approach to this. It's complex on the back end, yes, because it takes a lot to fail over your Windows server. But from you, it's not over engineered. It's not complex. It's very, very straightforward to use. It's designed for to reduce costs on your WAN. It gives you the flexibility of deploying this on any hardware that you want. And one of the nice things about Continuity Engine is that the same process you use for failover is the same process you use to bring it all back. So you don't have to worry about, oh my God, I'm over at the DR site. How do I get this back to production? We have easy processes built in for you to repopulate your new production environment. So it's very, very straightforward. And so if we go back to the beginning of the presentation, we talked about those two spheres, right? The security posture and the business continuity posture, right? We focused our presentation on Neverfail continuous availability, but we actually have a sister company that focuses in on the cybersecurity aspects of this. They are called Neverfail Continuous Control, and they have built the first purpose-built, first worldwide compliance automation platform. And so what they do is they take all of your security controls and they automate them. So they provide evidence collection and they do testing of those controls to make sure that they're valid and they work and they fall into your compliance framework. And if something fails, they can do remediation of those controls. Make sure that if for example, if my account doesn't get deleted in a certain way, or I'm not removed from certain groups when I leave the organization, that remediation process will kick in automatically, finish the job, and then report that this was an error, right? All of this comes together to be able to give you a security posture that is second to none. This is what has been missing in the industry for a long time, and Neverfail Continuous Controls provides that level of service. So as we finish up today, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have interest in Continuity Engine and how we can help you, I would love to spend time in a deep dive with you. Our team is ready to do this, and if you would like, we're going to reach out to you probably after this demo or this presentation. But we can schedule a deep dive with you, and if you do that, we will give you a Neverfail Continuous Availability shirt, our Continuity Engine dark mode shirt, and all you have to do is just register for a demo, do a deep dive, see how this works, see how fast you can do recoveries. And so if you would like to do that, we'll reach out to you, we'll follow up, or you can go to neverfail.com/webinar/engine-demo. Again, that's neverfail.com/webinar/engine-demo. And if you register for a demo with us, we will provide you with a really cool shirt. It doesn't show the back of this, but there's a real cool graphic on the back that shows the engine cluster status, which is really nice. And so it's a real cool shirt. So take advantage of this and sign up for a demo. And if you're new to business continuity and disaster recovery, you could always take a look at my blog. I actually have a very extensive blog. I have a lot of articles. I'm a writer, so you can go to Facebook and do a search on the Continuity Guy. If you prefer Twitter, you can go to twitter.com/continuity_guy, or you can just visit my blog at thecontinuityguy.org. So that is pretty much everything for today. We got a couple minutes here. We'll open up and kind of answer some of the questions. Zach, over to you.
Yes, just letting everyone know, if you do have questions, I do see a few hands raised in the attendance. There is a Q&A section right next to the translation or the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. If you just click on that, you can type up your answers and we'll try and answer them as best we can. So our first question right now is from Jorge. One of the main questions that his customers face is how can they be sure that the other server they switch to is not infected with ransomware?
It's a good question. So Jorge, the architecture around Continuity Engine is designed to be firewalled, right? So each node in the cluster is completely firewalled from the individual other nodes, primary, secondary, tertiary. Our protocol is the only thing that goes over that channel. It is locked down via port number and extensively via IP address. So only the corresponding channel IP addresses can talk to one another. So what you'll see is that the infection may take out the production server. When it begins the process of encrypting the volume, some of that data might actually leak over because we're replicating it real time before the actual system dies. What we have is this rollback module that allows you to take snapshots individually on each one of the members of the cluster, if you will, each node in the cluster. So they're firewalled also, so they're not replicated. So every node in the cluster will have its own set of snapshots on their own schedule. And so when you do fail over to your passive node, you can just roll back to just before the incident started and boom, you're back in business. Now, again, as I mentioned, you probably will have to do the triage work and the hygiene on the cybersecurity side, right, for the rest of the network before you reveal this thing to the network. But the idea here is that your application servers will be available and they can be brought online very quickly. So from a I guess when you have an entire team that is working to try to figure out what happened and then do the recoveries, they're not spending hours, days, and weeks trying to restore business services when they can really just do this instantly. And then the focus really is on the hygiene part of the network. Okay, a couple more questions.
Yeah, we got one from Sajesh. The replication server for Neverfail between production and DR is port blocking controlled at hardware level or at software level. Do we need to have a physical firewall for ACL?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So it is software controlled. We use the Windows firewall. So the Windows firewall is configured by Continuity Engine to protect the passive nodes. So we only allow our channel to be visible to the passive nodes, and so it is done by the software.
Cool. A couple more questions. One from Abraham. Are they able to protect the Neverfail server itself?
So the management server itself is not required to be protected just because you can install it and have it up and operational. It's within just like a minute or two. It's very lightweight, and there isn't any. It's stateless, right? So you don't have a lot of information that you're losing on it. So when you connect back to the primary or secondary server, in this case probably your failed over server, you can instantly connect to it and have it back up and operational. You can even run the engine management service, which is our manager, right, on a laptop. So it's not a critical path application. And by the way, there is an application that allows you to fail over on your nodes, all the nodes in the cluster. It's called the Advanced Management Client. So that is installed on every application or every node in the cluster. So even if you lose the management server, you still can go into one of those nodes and fail over. I think that's pretty much all the time we got, right?
We have one more question if you feel like answering it, but if you don't.
Sure.
All right, so this comes from Ignacio. How to deal with customers that do not believe this is possible because they have a great IT team regarding security?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm hoping that this type of presentation opens the eyes of folks that may think that they can't be infected with ransomware. The truth of the matter is that, you know, if you think that you are immune to this, you're probably going to be attacked, right? And these are the ransomware attacks are getting more and more insidious. These guys, these cybersecurity criminals, are making really, really good software, unfortunately, and they're finding ways to get through. So, you know, they're actually ahead of you, ahead of all your customers in how they can exploit vulnerabilities. So I think that it always is good to have a plan B or a plan C, because they could be ahead of you and you may have missed something.
All right, I think that's about it. Yeah. So I appreciate everybody attending our webinar. We'll upload this recording of the webinar to our YouTube, and we'll try and send this out to everybody who has attended, as well as anybody who registered but were not able to attend. So you can share this link with anybody who wishes to learn more about the continuity engine or how to recover from ransomware. But once again, thank you for all attending. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Dove, for speaking with us, and looking forward to the next webinar with Neverfail. Thank you.
Bye-bye.